Over the next few lessons, we're going to look in depth at comment tags. And these are a little bit different because they also require loading PHP templates and sometimes even working in the functions.php file to get exactly what we want. So we're not just looking at, for example, what you might think of comment text or comment author. There's a little bit of a high level understanding we have to have before we could get into those individual tags and where and how we would best use them. So to start off at a high level, the comments template tag loads the comments.php file. So comments.php is a default WordPress file that WordPress will automatically load when you call comments template. So this doesn't exist by default. You have to create it. And one of the most common things to do, as we'll see, is copy this over from a default WordPress theme and then modify what you want with it. So that's the first one, comments template. The next one to mention is this comments.php template. Again, this is the default WordPress naming convention for where your comment code should go that houses your comments. So again, we're going to be creating that file. Then there are some other methods like get comments number that could be helpful, and this will just give you exactly what you're expecting, the total number of comments. And then probably the most commonly used is the WP list comments. Now this would go inside your comments.php file, and this will actually list out all your comments for you. And WordPress does a pretty good job of displaying the name of the comment poster, what the time was, their gravatar if it's available, as well as the comment itself. So you could just use WP list comments on its own, and oftentimes that and a little CSS will get you everything you need. However, there are some parameters that can be passed into it and some ways we could override how the comments are displayed that may be common enough that it's worth going over here. And then finally, we have the comment form tag, and what that will do is just echo out the comment form itself in a little CSS, and you're good to go. Not really something that you'll probably need to customize. So this is at a high level, a couple of the template tags you need to know and the template, the comments.php that you need to know about. So let's start drilling down a little bit more specifically. If we wanted to begin customizing how comments appear in WordPress, what is the process we would need to go through? So the first thing we would need to do, or I would recommend doing, is starting with a comments.php file from a default WordPress theme. So go to 2018, 2017, 2016, any of them, and just grab the basic comments.php file and copy and paste it over to your theme. Now we'll look at one of these. There's going to be some stuff in there you might not understand yet, but basically it's just saying, here's a list of comments, and then here's the comment form. There's not a whole lot else really at a high level that's going on with that. So sometimes it's easiest just to copy it over from another theme and move on. So from there, what I would suggest doing is just seeing how much CSS you could customize to get that to work and just editing what's in your comments.php file. So if that is not enough, then you're going to turn your attention to WP list comments. Now, what I'll point out is that it has a callback function, so you could override how individual comments are displayed. If you don't like the default WordPress way of doing it, you could override it. But WP list comments also take some other parameters that we'll look at in the documentation that can help you customize things maybe enough that you won't have to completely override it and build yours from scratch. So with these three steps, you could do quite a lot to customizing pretty much everything in comments, but I also have to throw in that there is the Walker comment class in WordPress. So anytime you see tree-like architecture, it works for the menus, it works in comments. The Walker class is what's used. So there is a way to override how comments are listed, not how individual comments are displayed, but how they're listed and formed overall, extending the Walker class. However, this is way less common and something that I'll just link you to some resources to look up if and when that time ever comes up, because it's really not as common and it does get way more complex than these other approaches that we're going to take, which will probably cover most of your use cases. So let's start drilling in towards the code now. I know this might be a little confusing at a high level, so let's start working at some of this in action. And before we do that, let's just take a look at this WP list comments, because that's really going to be the heart of what we're looking at. And we could use it, as I said, completely on its own like this, or we could pass in attributes. So for example, we're going to be overriding our comments with a special comment or callback function. And if you were using a special Walker class, you could add that like this as well. But WP list comments does take some other parameters as well. So let's look at the docs for this one, and then let's start at scratch and start looking at how we could build out an entire comment section for our theme, including getting into using some of the template tags. So first of all, if we come into the docs to WP list comments, we could see that it takes an arguments and it'll take specific comments if we want to pass in specific comments to get. So inside of the arguments, we see max depth, the style of it, whether it's an ordered list or unordered list, the callback, which we'll be using, whether you want to accept certain types. So there are comments, but there's also pingbacks and trackbacks and pings when other people link to your site and content. If you want to list a certain number of them, change the size of the gravatar or avatar, change the format, HTML5 forms, and all these options here. So we're not really going to go in depth with each one of these, but when we get into practicing, I'd say come back to here and play around with each one and see how it changes and what it does. Now, we also want to point out that, of course, you want to have comments turned on in WordPress. So that is important, and they could also be overridden on individual posts and articles. So you want to make sure that's turned on while you have it disabled. We'll look at some options and ways to accommodate that. But for now, we just want to make sure that we have everything set up properly. So now coming into the code, I'm actually looking at the 2016 theme. You could look at 2017, 18, whichever one you happen to like or be looking at. There aren't too many differences between them, and I'm just kind of picking this one off the cuff. So what you're going to see when you open this up is first a statement, if password protected required. And what this means is that it will turn off the comments area if password protected is required. And then once the password is entered, then it'll display the comment. So this is just an extra layer of security and making sure that everything is password protected. If you don't want that functionality, you could change it, but this is the default WordPress setup. And then we see that we have a whole wrapper for all of the comments, whatever classes or IDs you need, and then it's running a conditional statement. Hey, if we have comments here, now this is going to get a little complicated. What I'm going to tell you is that all this code here inside the H2 is basically just displaying how many comments you have and the title. However, they're doing a lot of cool stuff to be able to easily translate how this appears. So you have one thought on this blog post, or there's this many number of thoughts on this, and you could translate them differently based on languages, etc. So it's just a lot of fancy stuff that's going on, but really all it's doing is get comments number, displaying that, and then getting the title. So really it's just saying, hey, we have this many comments. The comments navigation, and then we come down here and we list the comments out. Comments navigation is going to be if there's pagination or other stuff like that involved, and then coming down further, if comments are open, get the number of comments, etc., what to display if there's no comments or comments are closed, and then if that's not the case, then go ahead and display the comment form, and you could pass some parameters into that. Usually you're just going to use it on its own. So this is what a default one looks like. Now, like I said, you could just copy and paste this into your theme and you're probably going to be fine. You might want to remove some stuff. You might want to play around with different stuff and what's happening behind the scenes. But the easiest way to get a comments.php file into your theme is just to copy and paste it from one of the default WordPress themes, probably the latest, depending on what it is. So what you could do is copy and paste that over. I'm not doing that exactly, and I've created a comments.php file that's fairly similar. So we could see if it's password protected, we exit out. If we have comments, then we get the total comment number, and I'm saying one comment is this, and then there's other comments, we say 2 comments. Pretty simple. I'm simplifying a lot of it. We're still allowing for some translation, but it's not quite as complex. Okay, then we come down on the page, we can see we've got some unordered lists, and then we just list comments, which will put out a bunch of list items of all the comments, and underneath that, the comment form. So again, a comments.php file is really simple. It's exiting out if it's password protected. If there are comments, it's saying how many you have, and it's listing them out, and then it's going to put the comment form. Now, in order to get comments.php to load on a page, we have to call a special function. So I'm going to come into my single.php, which is controlling blog posts. And at the bottom, underneath the comment and everything, I could see comments template. And as we covered at the beginning, comments template is the template tag that's going to load comments.php. Just like get header and get footer will load the side or the header and footer files, comments template is going to load comments.php. So let's just take a look at how this default setup looks so far on the front end. So if I come over to a post on my site that has comments, you can see we've got quite a lot going on. We've got the gravatar, the name, the date and time, an edit link to edit directly. I could reply to it and it'll jump me down to the comment field. I've got my comment field with post comment. So this was all done pretty easily. We've got a little PHP to get the number of comments. We've got one line of PHP to echo out all the posts, and then one line of code to put in the comment form. And all that works pretty well. So just with this by default, you could do some CSS customizing and get pretty much what you want. However, there will be cases where you don't want this and you don't want to just start hiding anything, and you really do need to begin customizing things further. So that's where we use a callback function to override all of this code here. Now we're going to lose some stuff out of the box, but it will give us more flexibility in the big picture. So to do that, what I'm going to do is comment out this original comments list inside my comments.php, and I'm going to uncomment this section with arguments and a callback function. So what this is saying when you load the comments, instead of displaying them how you normally would, check out my callback function, and that's going to give you some instructions on how I really want things to be formatted. So this is a function name that lives in our functions.php file. So if we come into our functions.php file and load this, now this is all custom stuff that I'm writing. You name this whatever you want. It's a good idea to namescape it with whatever, my theme is or whatever. Comment, and I'm naming it comment because this is how an individual comment will be displayed. Now what you could do is put a bunch of PHP code in here in HTML and mix it and match it, but I don't think that's quite as clean. And what I like to do is actually load a template. So we've seen get template part before, but we haven't really used it in the functions.php file, but it's completely valid. So what I'm going to do is load a file called comment.php. Now this is not a default WordPress file. However, because comments.php is, I like the naming convention of comment.php, and comments, okay, this is going to control how all the comments are displaying, and comment individual is going to control how individual comments are displayed. So if I pop that open, you could see we've simplified things a bit. Instead of an li wrapper, we just have a class for comment. We've got the author, the date with the month, date, year, and then the hours, minutes, and AM or PM, and then the comment text. So really simple. Let's take a look at what will happen now if we run this. Notice that we've got it all hooked up here. And now on the front end, we can see we don't have the Gravatar. We don't have a lot of stuff. It's really stripped down. So for a comment site, you're going to want a lot more, but there are definitely cases where you want to strip things down. You want to customize it to look exactly how you want. So this is kind of the full process for loading everything up. Let's just review it before we move on, because the next step is to learn all the possible cool template tags that we can put in this area to get what we want exactly how we want it. So starting from a high level, we'd come into our single.php or page.php if we want comments enabled there, and we'd call comments template. Comments template in turn is going to load comments.php. Inside of comments.php, we're listing out the comments and we're calling comment form. Now, if we decide to have a callback function that overrides how individual comments are displayed, that's going to be located inside our functions.php file. Now, we could add template tags here, but what I'm going to do is just load a file called comment.php, which eventually bounces us over here. And this is where we could use what we would think of as all the comment template tags. So this is why I said at the beginning, we kind of need to back up, because you don't just open comments.php normally and start coding all of this directly. There's kind of a process, and it's a very WordPressy way. But now that you know it, it is fairly flexible, and it'll allow you to do exactly what you want. And especially if you set up a comment.php template, then all your code is nicely isolated, it's well named and easy to find. So hopefully this made sense. If it didn't, go back and try to copy what we've done so far, even just copying over a comments.php file from a default WordPress theme and using comments template to load it. And then from there, beginning to play with CSS, checking out what classes are available, how you could style it. And once you have that down, try to have this setup that we have here with a custom callback and a custom comment.php template. So once you have all of that set up and kind of worked out, then we could look in the next lesson at what are all the different common template tags that we would use with building out individual comments.